Hi there. Welcome to the WeSys webinar. We're so thrilled to have AWS here with Sarah and talking about cybersecurity leadership influence without authority. My name is Lynn Dome, and I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WeSys, WICYS, as We Sisters, because that's exactly what we are. We are a cyber sisterhood. And so our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. And we do so by creating opportunity. We have over 5,000 members comprised of women, men, allies, and advocates. We have representation in over 70 countries, having over 40 professional affiliates, which are mini WeSys organizations all throughout Africa, Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, UK, and throughout the United States. And we have developed and launched over 130 student chapters in Canada, Costa Rica, India, Nigeria, and all throughout the United States as well. So our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity, and we have many different initiatives and opportunities to do so. We have an online member forum where all our members can network and connect. Within the forum, we have special interest groups such as neurodiversity in cybersecurity, Latinas in cybersecurity, even cybersecurity law, data privacy. So you name it, we have a special interest group in there for you. Or if there isn't one, you feel free to go ahead and launch your own. We have many skill development training programs, such as the Security Training Scholarship. AWS builds out an entire roadmap for us that has beginner, intermediate, and advanced jam sessions. In addition to that, we have senior and executive level cloud security simulations, and that is an invite-only event, but that is brought to us by AWS, who is a strong strategic partner and supporter of the entire WeSys organization. We have newsletters, webinar series, scholarships, grants, and awards, not only for the WeSys conference that's coming up March 17th through the 19th in 2022 in Cleveland, Ohio, but also for other conferences as well. We have a cyber talent emergency fund, have many different speaking and media opportunities because we want our members to be what others can see, and that's the cybersecurity professionals they are. Our Job Board Plus Plus is a place for strategic partners to post their jobs in year-round and for all our members to get recruited from. And our members could update their profiles, upload their resumes, and have access to those job opportunities. We participate in market research, have leadership summits, virtual and in-person career fairs. We also have a veterans apprenticeship program. An internship program will be launching in the beginning of 2022. And additionally, we have our mentor-mentee program, which we're really proud to have developed a 12-month curriculum, and it's a structured framework that's designed to upskill and uplevel women no matter where they're at in their careers, preparing them for their next level of advancement. The 2021 cohort actually has 775 mentees and 191 mentors. We also have a racial equity committee to ensure that us, even as a nonprofit organization, continue to lead in leadership development skills with leadership series, everyone to grow at a capacity of allyship, equity, and inclusion being on the forefront of their minds, and many, many other initiatives. So we owe all that with the special thanks to our strategic partners. So wait for it. This is a mouthful, but I'm going to get them all in. AWS, which brings us our webinar here today. We also have Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Facebook, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft Optum, AbbVie, JP Morgan Chase & Company, LinkedIn, Navy Federal Credit Union, Nike, SentinelOne, Wayfair, Workday, Accenture, American Airlines, Arctic Wolf, Champlain College, Dell Technologies, InvestNet, Flatiron, Fortinet, Haystack Solutions, Here Technologies, The Home Depot, IBM, Indiana University, MITRE, Motorola Solutions, Oak Ridge National Lab, Palo Alto Networks, PayPal, Salesforce, SANS Institute, SAP, Schlumberger, SmoothStack, SpearTip, Starbucks, Target, University of California, San Diego, and Verizon. So we did it. Those are our strategic partners, and they help us build out all these different types of programs we do. So we're super thrilled to have Sarah here from AWS talking about the cybersecurity leadership and influencing without authority. So this is your chance to put in a lot of questions and engage with Sarah all throughout the event. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little questions box there for you to add them up there, and Sarah will be able to answer them live. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our newsletter to stay in touch with all things WESIS. So I'm going to go ahead and end that slide presentation and hand it on over. Without further ado, here's Sarah from AWS team, and she's going to take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lynn. And thank you to WESIS and the AWS team for inviting me to speak today. I'll bring up my slides. So thank you again for joining Security Leadership Influence Without Authority. So to dive in, just a quick introduction about who I am. So my name is Sarah, and I'm a security consultant within AWS Professional Services, which is like the consulting arm of AWS. And a little bit of a background on me. So prior to my career as a security consultant, I was a software engineer, a project manager, and also worked in sales and healthcare policy. So I have had interesting non-tech to tech career growth. And some of my favorite hobbies, trivia nights. I love outdoor activities like camping, hiking, cycling, you name it. Traveling. The picture on the left is actually a picture of me in India in a hot air balloon. And I do consider eating sushi a hobby. So, and like Lynn said, please post questions throughout, and I will try to answer them as we go and also save some time at the end. But I want this to be a very interactive presentation because those are always the most engaging and memorable in my opinion. So what are we going to learn about today? So we're going to learn how to create a culture that encourages escalation. We're also going to learn how to be self-driven for security challenges. So when we're talking about driving leadership, and especially in cybersecurity without authority, this is going to be for different types of individuals. Maybe you don't have a senior title, such as myself. Maybe you don't feel like you have the authority to influence and change things. Maybe you have limited tenure at your company and you are a senior or a director, but you just started recently, and so you don't feel like you have the means to speak up. And maybe you're a student and you're just wanting to learn how you can grow as a leader throughout your career. And so some of these things we're going to go through. So again, being self-driven for your security challenges, reducing risk with automated workflows, and also sharpening your soft skills to gain trust. This one's a really important one because a lot of times we focus on technical skills in terms of security, but soft skills are also going to be crucial in order for you to really gain that trust and pull authority from different types of means than you would normally with seniority. So before we dive in, I want to start with a quick little story. So let's talk about failure. So personally, I don't think that we talk about failure enough and how we each individually have failed in our careers or within our teams or our organizations. It's inevitable that as humans, we're going to make errors and how we can learn from them. So failure should be seen as a learning experience. And you might be embarrassed at first, but it's really a crucial way that you can grow professionally, and especially in the security industry. And at AWS, we always like to say that we want to fail fast, which essentially means that we'd rather fail early on in a project and learn from that and implement our learnings in the future so that we can prevent it. So let's start with a quick story. So this is my story. So about 9 months into a new job, I was working with a large customer and I was eager to step up. I actually was an associate at the time. So I was the least senior on the project. And I also was least tenured as well at the company. But I was eager to step up. I wanted to take on some new different security automation and help this customer improve their security posture. So I created infrastructure as code to help implement those guardrails. I did a code peer review with internally and then also with the customer. And so I was ready to implement, ready to get to work. However, once we actually implemented this infrastructure as code, there was a typo in the code. So we were actually implementing tagging, and some of the tags had all capitalized standardization and some did not. So this typo caused the code to break in the actual When we tested it, it did work outside of the testing environment, but the production environment was different. So it actually caused some destructive remediation actions because it was removing resources that didn't adhere to this tagging compliance. But keep in mind, the tags there was a typer. So this broke resources in production. And I always like to tell people, are you actually an engineer if you've never broken something in production? But essentially, this is kind of to start off a story to talk about the lessons that I learned through this experience and other experiences in my career. So we'll dive into some different learnings to help you improve your cybersecurity posture, despite your title or tenure. So keep in mind, I was an associate when this happened, least tenured, least seniority. And if you're on the call and you're actually a manager or a person in position of authority, these are some different tips that you can use to mentor people on your team and in your organization. So diving in with the poll. So have you ever seen an issue at your company that you've worked for and you didn't speak up because of your tenure or lack of seniority? And if you are a student, this could be something in your classes, but also if you've ever interned or worked for a company. So we'll get that poll going. And essentially, this is seen a lot. So, no reason to be embarrassed if it's ever happened. It's happened to me as well. But it is something that we like to look at in terms of diving into the different lessons. So it looks like I'll give a few more seconds. But currently, it looks like we have 100% has said yes, which I 100% agree with because we've all done that. We've all felt maybe intimidated or maybe even assumed that someone else would speak up. So we're going to dive into some different ways that we can counter these different happenings. So lesson number 1, something that we say at AWS a lot and within the cybersecurity industry is that security is job zero. So security is not just our job as maybe the cybersecurity professionals. It's also going to be the jobs of, let's say you work at a company that's retail. So the retail associates or the people that are doing the different inventory in the back. Security is everyone's job. So it doesn't matter what your level or title is. We all need to be leaders in security. And if you don't consider yourself technical, that's totally okay. If you see something that looks suspicious, like a phishing email or a potential security event, you want to alert people. And if you alert and it's just a mislabeled alert, that's totally fine. We'd rather catch something rather than letting it go unsaid. And you might ask yourself, why would some people not speak up if they see something? So there's a few different reasons in cybersecurity where sometimes security is not promoted in organizations. It can be things like complacency, maybe saying this is never going to happen to us, so we don't need to worry about it. Maybe fear. There could be fear of retribution if you're the one who points out a problem within your organization. There could also be lack of awareness. Maybe you don't even know that that's a security risk, or someone on your team doesn't know that that could be a risk to everyone on your org. And lastly, there's also something that I think is a very interesting concept because I am from the South. So I always go back to my Southern hospitality. But in security, we want to make sure that safety comes before politeness. So even in the sense of physical security, not holding the door open for others when you're walking into a corporate building and saying no or pushing back if someone asks you for credentials. I know a lot of the times we want to come across as, being polite, but when it comes to security, we really want to make sure that that safety is coming priority. And so when it comes to implementing this, how can you go about making sure that security is job zero for everyone? So as we know, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and they actually are encouraging everyone to do your part, be cyber smart. And some of these aspects are including ensuring that everyone in your organization has security training. And I also put in that it's easy to understand. Security training is not helpful to anyone if it is overly complicated and not using real-world examples that everyone in your organization could understand. It's also important that you want to make sure that it's easy to report. So if someone sees something, but they have to go through multiple hoops to escalate or to try to make sure that someone is taking care of it, it probably is going to deter people from reporting in the future. And then another aspect that I always love to talk about is that security affects everyone in the organization. So you want to make sure that you're really thinking from different angles, especially in terms of different departments. So a CEO wants to look at how, we're accelerating and scaling outcomes while being secure. A CMO might be looking at how can we protect our brand reputation, and general counsel might be wanting to ensure how are we following data protection and regulation laws. And another aspect of this in terms of diversity and inclusion, I think it's really important to also think about different perspectives and different intersectionalities when it comes to security as well. So for example, a 60-year-old Asian man might react differently to a phishing email than a 20-year-old Black woman. And it's really important to think about that and how security affects people differently. So that's one of the lessons in terms of using these skills so that you can add this to your repertoire to really pull from that authority. So the second lesson, like I mentioned before, about creating an escalation path. So I know this has probably happened to anyone who uses any type of messaging system within your company. But have you ever, seen someone who messaged 1,000+ people in a Slack channel to escalate something? The @ channel mechanism. I've seen it happen. And as we all know, it's not productive because it causes email or message storms, and it normally causes confusion and also some disgruntled coworkers. So this is one of the reasons that why establishing escalation paths are crucial throughout an organization in order to solve a problem and make sure that you're getting it to the people who do have influence to set those different channels of decision making. So in terms of escalation paths, something that I always suggest is creating different emergency scenarios for different situations. So you definitely obviously want to have your cybersecurity, but you also might want to have operational escalation paths and other different matters of concerns that your team might be affected by, so that you can dig into the root cause. And so some of the things that are very important in terms of escalation paths is ensuring that you're using it takes a village mentality. So you're not, going to call out the person, you're calling out the problem. So in terms of escalation paths, you want to make sure that there is a very clear and concise way to follow an escalation path. And you could honestly start out as easy and simple as a yes or no flow chart. Those are some of the best and easiest escalation path documentation to understand in terms of what you should do next if you saw a security issue. You're also going to want to set time limits. So you want to have different SLAs for when you need to essentially resolve this issue by. And if it's not resolved, it gets escalated to an even higher level. And again, this is going to help clarify boundaries between different teams and also ensure that it gets to the right people. So if you see a certain cybersecurity issue, whether it's a DDoS attack, phishing emails, etc., you're able to escalate those appropriately to the correct team so it gets taken care of. So let's say you already have an escalation path. Well, you might need to improve your escalation culture, because it does not do any good if you have an escalation path, but people are afraid to use it. And again, this can go back to individuals being nervous about fear of retribution, fear of being blamed. And that is not the culture that you want for your security team and your organization. So you want to encourage an escalation that's for the greater good. So we think of escalation at AWS as a way to improve different mechanisms and learn from our mistakes or failures. So what your team would want to do if you already have an escalation path, but maybe not a culture of escalation friendly and risk friendly in terms of figuring out different problems, you want to establish a certain mechanism that you can dive deep and document those learnings. So at Amazon, we actually have a mechanism called correction of errors, because we know that human error is inevitable. And with this correction of errors, we call a COE. It's essentially going to help identify issues, measure the customer impact, and also ask questions about why did this happen? How did this happen? And then generate action items to ensure that the error does not happen again. So this is a really great way to build that mechanism to promote a friendly escalation culture that's going to help improve your team. And you can also take ownership and ensure that you are escalating when things are not in your control. We always want to have ownership over different security issues, but it doesn't do any good if you don't actually have any influence. So this is why escalation is very important. No matter what your title is, if you're an associate, a junior, or if you're a director, you want to ensure that you're escalating appropriately so that the security issues are addressed in an appropriate manner. The other reason why you might be wondering, why does she have a unicorn picture here? This seems kind of random for escalation culture. So as a security individual, many people sometimes see us as the people of no. We tell people, no, you can't do that. You can't implement that. But at AWS, we like to be seen as the people of how. So yes, we would love to support your customer implementation, but how can we do so securely? Because we know that customers are going to want to move forward with different innovative technologies, and we're going to need to implement those in a secure manner. So the reason I added the unicorn is because one of my tips in general for trying to, have leadership and really get that authority is trying to be approachable. So our security team likes to have fun with our presentations and make sure that we're really engaging people, as well as sometimes wearing costumes, like for example, a unicorn onesie. And we also have unicorn stickers. And this helps people feel more approachable to us so that they feel like they can come to us with an issue and not feel any fear. So that is definitely one of the really good tips for going in that. So moving on to a poll. So do you have an established cybersecurity escalation path within your organization? And again, if you're not at a company currently, think about, maybe the university that you're with, or if you have a side business, do you have an established security escalation path within your organization? So we're going to give some time for people to fill out that poll. Start that right now. So your options are yes, no, and I don't know. And again, any of the answers are good. We're just trying to see here what the different paths people have been given at companies and how you can help improve that culture depending on what your organization has. So I'm going to keep this open for a little bit. And essentially, if anyone's wondering if putting at here in a Slack channel with thousands of people is an escalation path, it is not. So just always like to preface that. And again, since many of us are in the security field, I expect probably to be a fair amount of yeses. All right, so it looks like we're wrapping up on our poll here. Give it 10 more seconds. It's still moving a little bit of people responding. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in and we'll go over those at the end. All right, I'm going to close the poll here. So it looks like we have 61% said yes, which is great that you have an escalation path. 23% said no, there is no escalation path, and 15% said I don't know. And if you don't know, again, totally fine. Action items for the know and don't know groups. This is going to be your call to action to either help establish a security escalation path or help make it more easily findable. Because if you don't know, your organization might have one, but it doesn't help if you don't know that there is a path. And if you said yes, that's great. You can also have a call to action to help improve your escalation paths as you see any gaps. So let's go into a quick little quiz for a scenario. And please feel free to use the question bank to answer this. Feel free to put your answer in here. But let's say we have this scenario. So let's say you're a junior engineer that works on analytics. Again, junior, so you're not really having any level of seniority within your team. Your team is working with sensitive customer information. And you realize that one of the Amazon S3 buckets does not have encryption enabled. So this is important because this could be a security risk to your company as well as to the customer that you're working with if it's sensitive customer information that requires encryption being enabled per any regulations or compliance frameworks. So what would you do? So take a second to answer in the questions box, and we can talk about some of these different answers. But think about some of the different things that we've talked about already. Would you escalate to people on your team? Would you, if you had access, just go in and enable encryption on your own? There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. I'm just looking for what different people would do here. So feel free to pop those in the questions. So again, it's great if you said that you go in and encrypt on your own, you're trying to take ownership, but let's change the scenario up a little bit. What if your company has 100 S3 buckets with sensitive information? Do you manually check each one? Where do you go from there? Obviously, you could manually check each one, but that's going to be very time consuming. There's possible you'll miss a bucket. That is something that's not going to be good. So what should you do? Well, this is a great use case for automation. So with automation, this is my lesson 3. So automate as much as you can. And why is automation important? It's because in cybersecurity, it allows you to prioritize threats and handle cyber attacks automatically with preset courses of action. So it's going to essentially reduce the need for human intervention, reduce response time, and address security issues without that manual effort. So in the last scenario we just talked about, if you had an Amazon S3 bucket, but let's say you had a service control policy that prevented the creation of buckets without without encryption, then you wouldn't even have that problem to begin with. And I see someone just chatted in that they would escalate to management. That's great. That is something that should be escalated to management, because if it is not in your area of influence, let's say you have a read-only access, and you're not going to be able to go in and necessarily change that to enable encryption. And you don't know if it could break anything if encryption is enabled. So great call on that with escalating to management. Again, without automation, security teams have to deal with an increasing number of security alerts and potential incidents that could, again, require a ton of time and valuable time to resolve. And also, as we know, there can be very many false positives, maybe a mislabeled alert. And so that time ends up being spent that you didn't really need to spend on that because it was a false positive. So again, automation is going to be great for essentially ensuring that you can create remediation actions, and also allows for scaling. Again, manually checking security controls is not going to be something that your team can do if there's only one security engineer and maybe there's thousands of EC2 instances or Amazon S3 buckets. This is going to allow your team to scale as well. So how can you automate? Some of the things that I suggest is, if you're not sure what can be automated, start tracking some manual tasks that you do daily and start to brainstorm how those could be automated to essentially help your team. There's also a ton of security tools out there. With AWS, we have different security tools where you can auto remediate any security findings. So if you're using AWS Security Hub, it essentially monitors and checks different resources to see if there's any vulnerabilities, and then lets you know if you need to remediate. And you can also turn on auto remediation. So again, it's saving your team that time to go in and remediate. You can also use AWS Config. And this is a service that's going to check the configuration of your resources against any frameworks such as HIPAA, PCI, any type of controls to see if they're non-compliant. And again, you can do auto remediation there. So there's a lot of different tools you can use outside of AWS as well if you're not in AWS Cloud. There's tools such as Prowler, Scout Suite. There's a whole list of them out there that you can use. Rapid7, Exabeam, different SIM tools like Splunk. So these are going to be a really good way that you can elevate your security posture and also show your expertise as a security professional and really, again, get that authority without your senior title. I did put a warning though. Even with automation, it is great. It's definitely the way of the future, but I always suggest still doing a human peer review because that's going to catch anything that automation might not. So again, there's definitely the added layers of security where you want to add automation, but you also want to make sure you're still having your peer reviews as well for your code. So moving into lesson 4, leading with data. So have you ever come into a situation where you know that something feels funny? Someone maybe asked you, "Hey, Sarah, can you share your credentials with me? Like, I can't find my password." Just something that feels uh, like it shouldn't be happening, or you're trying to convince your manager, that this is going to be best for the company and your customer, but you're just having a really hard time convincing your manager because maybe you are the most junior on the team, or you haven't been at the company very long. Something that's going to help you influence others, especially in security world, is leading with data. So you're going to be able to take data so that you can move quickly on a project. Even when some information is lacking, you're just going to want to make sure you're prioritizing the correct metrics. So essentially, this is super important because it's going to allow your team to make small progress towards a solution rather than finding a perfect way right away. So you can take the data that you have and carefully consider the metrics about what's important. So let's say that you're seeing specific logs for your servers that are having some, maybe not unauthorized access, but some suspicious logins or repeated, forgot passwords for the same user that's happening very frequently. You can take that data with you and present that to your manager or to your team. And that's going to be a really great way to reinforce your authority on this. You're not just coming in saying that you think that this is a problem. You know it's a problem because of the data. So again, going into how can you implement this? So there's a lot of different tools out there. You can use Amazon CloudWatch. There's also Amazon CloudTrail. So CloudWatch helps monitor your different resources in the cloud, and CloudTrail looks at the different API calls for all of your different resources. So who logged in, anything like that. There's also, again, lots of tools outside of the cloud as well. If you use Splunk, you can look at those logs, and Exabeam. Look at those logs to kind of gather the data that you're seeing. Maybe you're seeing a lot of instances going down at a certain period because of high traffic. Maybe it's specific traffic, or maybe it's just traffic that your company has gone viral on TikTok and you didn't realize that. And so this data can be super helpful to help you make your argument for why you should go a certain way with your business outcomes to your manager or to leadership. Something that I do like to preface, though, is you want to make sure you're representing the data and information transparently and fully. You don't just want to pick out a log or one statistic out of all of the data that supports your argument. You want to look at the data as a whole. If the data as a whole does not support your argument, maybe this is an opportunity for you to challenge your own biases and perspective, because the data really is what you can pull from. And again, when it comes to data, there's quantitative and qualitative. So I think qualitative is missed a lot in these different forums. And something that we take very seriously at AWS is getting feedback from our customers. So what does that look like? What are the different mechanisms? Hopefully your organization has some type of mechanism in place, but if not, again, this would be a great way to show your expertise and authority in the matter. And, if a customer is maybe going in and they're doing things correctly, they're implementing as they should, but they're having a poor experience. Maybe the UI is taking a really long time to train people and it's not very intuitive. That's data that you want to use to take to your manager so that you can constantly be innovating and improve upon your services and products. And again, lastly, you want to take action. If you see data that is concerning to you, you want to go back to that escalation lesson where you're escalating appropriately and in a timely manner so that you can take that data and address it. And again, if it's not something that's currently an issue, that's okay. But it's better to take that data and take action, take ownership so that you can address it if it is a major problem. So moving into our last lesson here with establishing authority through trust. So again, you don't need to have seniority or a specific amount of tenure at a company in order to improve your cybersecurity at your company or within your team. So this is honestly probably, in my opinion, one of the most important lessons because I feel like it's underlooked a lot, especially with women in organizations, we are so good at building trust, and it really should be seen as an advantage, all of our different soft skills that we have. It is a package deal with technical skills and soft skills, because it doesn't matter if you can code the heck around your coworkers if you can't explain and communicate what you're trying to do. So in terms of establishing authority through trust, there's a few different ways you can do this. But I always like to tell people that if you can convince people to follow your lead without authority, it really shows that you've gained their trust. If people just follow you because you're their manager, but really no other reason than that, that's not something to brag about. You want to make sure that you have people's trust. And if people are hesitant to listen to you, then they probably don't trust you in some shape or form. So we can dive into that. You might be wondering why I added a plane photo. So this is actually a quick story that happened in the last week. I actually took a flight from New York to Nashville. And while I was creating my booking reservation, I actually noticed a security vulnerability with this airline. And I won't disclose what that vulnerability was, but essentially, as a security professional, I felt like it was my duty to escalate it because, again, I don't have any influence with this airline. So I Googled the airline security center, and I reached out to escalate through their public escalation path. So did I have any level of authority with this company? No. The only level of authority I would have, I guess, is in the perspective of the customer. So you might be asking, how did you establish trust? So in the email that I provided, I did not finger point. I did not blame the airline. I just clearly stated the issue and the potential effects that it could have. And I also offered a potential solution. That is not always something that you have to do, but I highly recommend when you escalate to provide a potential solution, because it's going to make it that much easier when you're brainstorming if you already have a certain idea on the table. And I also established trust by providing my security cyber expertise and telling them my background, that this is why I was able to identify the security vulnerability. And then again, providing my perspective as a customer and how this could affect customers as well as the airline. So let's look into some different ways that you could establish authority through trust. So I added this handy chart here that you can use to kind of think about the different aspects when it comes to building trust. But in security, there's a few different ways that you can establish authority without that level of seniority or tenure. So some of the different aspects is you can pull on your security expertise. Let's say that you've been a security professional for the last 10 years, 5 years, it could even be 1 year. You still might have more expertise than someone else on your team, and you want to pull from that. You can start off by saying, I'm a security professional and this is what I'm saying, and here is the data. So that's a really solid way to establish authority. If you're also really great at building relationships with your coworkers, it's a really, really good way to establish that trust and authority, because if someone already knows you well and you've built that positive working relationship with your coworker, they're more likely to listen to you and any type of cybersecurity issue that you're escalating. Additionally, let's say you're not a security expert at all. Let's say you don't know anything about security, but you definitely saw something that looked maybe suspicious. You can use your working knowledge of the organization. So let's say you work at AWS and you might not know that this is a phishing email, but from your inner workings of working at AWS that this doesn't seem right. Maybe this team, they don't ask for passwords, so why are they asking for passwords now? And so you can pull from this knowledge to help establish authority. And then lastly, one of my favorites, honestly, is just showing eagerness to help people. If you're willing to show up, you might not have any expertise, any seniority, you might not even know people on the team. But if you're willing to come and help figure out this problem, that's going to establish trust in the way that you are wanting to be a team player, and you're wanting to make sure that this security issue gets resolved in a timely manner for your customers, as well as for your company too, to ensure that you still keep your brand reputation intact. So let's do a quick poll. Let me start it on my side. So what's your favorite way to gain trust with your coworkers? So we have a few different options. It could be providing your expertise. Maybe you are the go-to person for pen testing or PCI compliance, and PCI compliance inside and out. You can talk about all the different preventive and detective controls, and that is how you can establish authority, even though maybe you are a junior. You can also go with relationship building. So let's say you ask a coworker to get coffee and you want to get their advice on a specific situation. This is a really good way to let that coworker know that you are interested in leading in your organization. And then lastly, eagerness to help. You just want to show up. You're the go-to person to step up and take ownership. You might not know anyone on the project or have any expertise, but you're willing to learn on behalf of the team or org so that you can essentially close those gaps and make things better. So I'm going to end the poll, and it looks like we have, let's see, it's going to reset in just a second. So it looks like we have 50% with eagerness to help, which is great. That is always going to be one of the really good ways to pull and essentially create that trust. It also looks like we have about 43% in relationship building and 12% in providing your expertise. And I'm going to challenge you all actually on the providing your expertise. Definitely, I know a lot of women, suffer from imposter syndrome, and it happens to me as well. But don't be hesitant to come in and say, I have been a security person for the last 5 years, whatever your tenure is, and this is what I know, and here's the data. That's going to be a really solid way to make your case and show your leadership. So I know 12 people responded that that's how they go about gaining trust, but I challenge everyone to really, hone in on that and ensure that, relationship building is great, same with eagerness to help, but you also really do want to pull from your technical expertise or your knowledge of the organization, because that's going to solidify your place as a technical leader. So circling back to the story that we started with, so you might be wondering, how did the story end since you caused a production issue, Sarah? Well, I have good news for you all. It ended up being a very good situation for all parties involved. I learned a ton from it. What I did is I essentially escalated to the appropriate teams and leaders through one of our established escalation paths. We actually have a path based on different severity levels. And from there, it gets escalated to the appropriate leaders. Once we rolled back the code and resolved the issue, we took the next 2 months or so to document the different steps of errors that happened and really dove into why things happened. So we have this process of asking the 5 whys. And this process is really supposed to be digging into the root cause of an issue. So why did we have a typo? It was because there wasn't standardized naming across tags. Well, why wasn't there standardized namings across tags? And really diving into those different issues, because it's going to allow you to get to the core root of the problem. And it also allows you to focus on the issue and, again, not blame others. And then lastly, what we did was we created action items based on the different gaps that we saw between teams. And we had these assigned to different owners that took ownership to essentially close the gap on these different action items to improve our security path for customer experience. So this was a great learning experience for me. I learned so much, and I also felt like it really helped me improve my cybersecurity leadership skills and also improve my confidence. And a quote that I'd like to provide you all is he's author of How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by Clay Scroggins. And one of his quotes is, "Leaders don't sit back and point fingers. Authority is largely irrelevant. If you are a leader, you will lead when you're needed." So that's something I just want to leave you all with. Again, it doesn't matter your seniority or tenure or your level of imposter syndrome. Be bold. Use your sense of authority through providing your expertise, relationship building, and eagerness to help. So again, key takeaways. You're really going to want to be self-driven for these security challenges. So again, you want to take ownership, but you also want to know when things aren't in your area of control. So when they're not, that's when you want to escalate. And this goes into, you want to create a culture that's going to encourage escalation, because when we think about escalation, the point of it is to ensure that we're remediating problems in a timely manner for the greater good of our customers and for your organization. You can also do this and help maybe prevent even some potential cybersecurity issues on your team by using automated security tooling to create those automated workflows with preventive and detective controls so that you can prevent any resources from being created that are not compliant, and then also detect any non-compliant resources or detection of unauthorized access. And again, if you do see any of this and you're seeing an issue on your team, especially in terms of security, you want to build your case with data. So going through and ensuring that you are using those log files, using any type of data that you see in graphs, maybe you're seeing a spike in different vulnerabilities and also severity level. Maybe you're seeing critical levels of security vulnerabilities versus maybe low level. And you're going to want to take that to your team. And it's going to allow you to earn trust with your customers and internal stakeholders so that you can build that security leadership without authority. So, call to action items. As we all know, there's always room to improve, and that is okay to admit. So, some of the different call to actions that I want to challenge you all to take on after this session. And this, you can take one and just start progress on them, but here are a few different options. So, for those of you who said that you did not have a security escalation path or you didn't know, you're going to want to establish that security escalation path. That's going to be something that is really going to make you stand out as a leader in your organization, is going in and, again, providing data. In this case, you could provide industry data that escalation paths are the go-to way to make sure that you have a good incident response. And if you said that you do have an escalation path, make sure that you are looking to see how you can improve that, whether it's through creating a friendly culture or maybe just as simply as you being an approachable security person and reaching out and offering to help any coworkers who aren't security experts. So that's one of the call to action items. And then again, maybe deploying security scanning tools. Maybe you are a security engineer and you want to go in and automate as much as possible. This can be one of your call to actions to see what manual processes your team is using and how you can reduce human error and also decrease the turnaround for remediating. Lastly, you could also pull your security findings report to identify any gaps. If you are an AWS customer, this is very easy to do. You can go into the security tools and you can pull reports. And this is a really easy way to, again, build your case with data and to essentially help influence others to see that there is an issue that needs to be remediated. And lastly, when it comes to building trust, maybe just a small step of building trust with a coworker, maybe Slack a coworker and check on them, or ask them to coffee and ask them how they feel like the organization's security could improve. This would be going back again to collecting that qualitative data about how you can improve the process and really, again, making sure that you as a leader are stepping up and approaching people in a way that you can build trust with them. So last poll of the day, I'm going to start this one. So I started the poll, but what is the first call to action item on your list to accomplish? So again, I really want to challenge you all. I'm so glad that you joined this session, but I want you to take what you learned today and actually put it into action and make it a tangible result for your team or your organization. Because again, this is going to be a way that you can build your portfolio of leadership, showing that you are helping to improve security among your team. So again, going through it, first one, are you going to establish or improve an escalation path as your call to action? Maybe you're going to add in CloudFormation Guard to your current CI/CD pipeline that is currently manual. Maybe you've been seeing a problem and you've been having a hard time convincing your manager or other teammates. Maybe you're going to go and collect that data so that you can use it in your narrative or proof of concept that you want to show how it's going to improve. Or lastly, D, you're going to offer your expertise or check in on a coworker. So we'll give a few more seconds. And perfect. I'm going to end the poll. So it looks like this is what people are going to take on first. So it looks like a lot of people feel like they can go and collect data and use that to influence others. So 66%. We actually had a tied amount for establishing or improving an escalation path. I do think I remember seeing at least 15% of you saying that you did not have escalation paths. So make sure you put that on your to-do list. And then B, oh, it looks like it's updated a little bit. So 18% add automation, and then 9% are going to offer their expertise or check on a coworker, which is great. So to wrap up, obviously you joined the session because you're interested in learning and you want to learn more. So you can keep learning beyond this session. AWS has a ton of free resources with AWS training and certification. So according to Global Knowledge IT Decision Makers report, there are different leaders that are having the most difficult time finding qualified cybersecurity talent. So training has never been more important. So we offer more than 25 digital and classroom courses for you and your teams to take around security, identity, and compliance. And as you know, WSIS has amazing sessions, so continue to keep taking those and continuing to improve your security posture and leadership skills. And also, I know this slide is annoyingly bright, but I wanted to make sure that I got your attention. We are hiring at AWS. We're always hiring, but we are hiring a ton of security professionals. So if you're a security consultant, a security engineer, maybe you do security assessments, or you're just interested in learning how you can pivot, please apply. There is a statistic out there that women only apply to jobs if they meet 100% of the qualifications. Do not do that. If you see that you meet at least the basic qualifications, please feel free to apply, because what's the worst that can happen? Maybe you will get a job at AWS. So thank you so much for all of your attention and time. I really appreciated speaking with you today. And again, thank you to WSIS for the opportunity to come in and let me present this and how you can improve your security leadership without any seniority. So now we're going to go into any questions. It looks like we have about 9 minutes left. So please feel free to add questions into the questions bank. It looks like we have one coming in. So this question is, how can I verify that my team is adequately educated about current cybersecurity threats? So that's a great question. So let's say you work specifically with your team, but maybe you're not, you don't have great visibility into how other teams that are not security minded necessarily, how they are being trained. So something that's going to be really important is ensuring that you have ongoing training for your teams with security. And I encourage these to be engaging. So you can do self-taught videos, but you can also have lunch and learns. You can make it fun. You can even do scenarios where similar to the scenario we had before, where you stop and you really think about, what would you do in this scenario? We call those game days at AWS, where we have specific scenarios and we talk about, okay, what if we're having a DDoS attack? What do we do? And do we know who we're supposed to talk to about this? Those are really fun exercises for honestly anyone, and it gets people excited about security. You could also do some red teaming, which red teaming is essentially when you play the role of the enemy or the competitor, and you could create some type of fake security vulnerability. I've seen sometimes where organizations will actually send a fake phishing email to see who clicks on the link. And that can also be a way that you can provide some security feedback to your team. So great question. So it looks like we have some other questions in here. So how can we work around stubborn leaders that effectively block our escalation path? That is a great question, because I know that happens in a lot of different organizations. So my number one piece of advice for this would be to provide the data. I know we talked about that already, but if you bring hard data to a leader and they are not listening to you, then that is something that maybe should be escalated above them if possible. But data is really going to be something that looks glaringly at people when it comes to what is going to be the best path forward. And it really helps take opinions out of it, because it's just the facts. These are the hard numbers. So that is what I would suggest for that. And if you are having trouble with specific leaders, don't be hesitant to maybe reach out to a leader who is supportive and get them to advocate on behalf of you. What are some basic qualifications needed for entry-level positions if you're trying to pivot into security from a different industry, accounting? That's a great question. So I actually came from a non-technical background and pivoted into security. So please take a look at the job descriptions. There are going to be basic qualifications on there, but some of the different qualifications I would recommend, especially if you're interested in security, is looking at different security assurance programs, getting certifications. That's really going to show companies that you're serious about pivoting and that you have those skills. So there's different types of certifications. At AWS, we have the cloud practitioner certification, and that's just a foundational, it's not technical at all. So you could take that just to show that you're interested in cloud computing or the cloud industry. For security, there's a lot of different certifications out there, but that would be my number one I would suggest for learning to pivot. Also, being able to code like Python, that's always a great plus, but it's definitely not something that will disqualify you. So honestly, just the eagerness to learn is always a great way to start with that. But again, I would recommend certifications. And the next question is there a link to your security professionals opening? Yes. So I put my LinkedIn and I can actually go back to that one second. I forgot that my slides were still up. Let me go back to the slides. I'll put my LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out to me. I always like talking with people. I actually reached out to women on LinkedIn when I was looking to pivot, and they helped me. So I always want to pay it back. So again, my LinkedIn is Sarah Curry. It's down here in the left-hand corner. But if you go to Amazon.com jobs, so I think it's jobs.amazon.com, you can type in security and probably thousands of openings will come up, to be honest with you. My team, we are called security consultants, and we are all over the world, honestly. But my team is based in the Southeast, but we have teams all over. So let me see if I can pull that job finder. Jobs.amazon, and I'll post that in the link. So here we go. And last few questions. Let me add my slides. For those of us looking to level up our skills, especially if we want to look at AWS for a career, what are some ways we can sharpen and demonstrate these skills? Great question. So again, the certifications are going to be super valuable. We've also partnered with WeSys a few times to do AWS jams, and those are really great experiences to show that you can dive into the AWS console and actually implement different security solutions. And it's a really fun way, honestly, to learn. So those are really great ways. And if you're looking to become a security consultant, also having those consultant skills and being able to have those soft skills and really use those to your advantage. But in terms of really sharpening your skills for the career, in terms of AWS, I would definitely suggest there's Quick Labs. There's also A Cloud Guru, Linux Academy. There's so many resources out there, and also free resources. I personally really like A Cloud Guru. They have a great foundational course that you can go in. And then once you do that foundational course, you can dive into the security one. But again, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can give you some more specifics based on your background. And I think those are all of the questions we have today. I don't know if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in. But otherwise, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciated your time today. And again, please feel free to apply if you're interested.